Hey everyone, and welcome to a new video. Today I am going to be showing you 5 techniques that I often forget about that are truly fabulous for creating cards. Today's video is also a collaboration with Jenny from Gen C Cards, and I am super excited that she's going to be showing her 5 techniques that she often forgets as well. So without further ado, let's dive right in. So I don't know about you, but I have a ton of washi tape that is laying around, and I love using it for things like sealing envelopes and gift packaging, but I don't use it a lot on my cards, I would say. So let's change that, and I'm going to show you a really cool technique here that you can do. It'll give you a 2-for-1 card as well, so that's really fun. So not only are you doing kind of a custom paper technique here, I'm creating a piece of pattern paper essentially out of washi tape first. Now, when you're choosing your washi tapes, you want to keep color in mind, and so I'm using actually all of the same brand because then I know that the colors and styles are similar. The white backgrounds on all 3 of these washi tapes are going to be the exact same shade of white, which is important. And overall, generally, washi tapes from the same company have a very similar style, or you want to choose a set perhaps. All 3 of the washi tapes that I'm using in today's video are from Alexandra Renke. She has really amazing washi tapes, and I love how soft and pretty they are. All 3 of these are sort of spring themed, so I have some Easter bunnies, I have some birds, and then I have a magnolia flower. And one of these is retired, but the other 2 are still available. I have them listed below in the video description if you want to check them out. Once you have your card panel all done here, mine personally is 4 by 5 1/4. You can go ahead and tuck the tape in behind, or you can just grab a pair of scissors and trim the excess washi tape. Now, I personally don't have any Easter die cuts, so I've pulled out these bold alphabet die from Altenew, which is one of my favorite alphabet stamps on the market. And I'm going to lay out the word Easter here on my card panel. When I feel as if I have good placement, I'm going to go ahead and secure the die cuts with some purple tape, or washi tape will do as well. Even those leftover bits you might have cut off the back will hold them in place. And I'm going to run them through my die cutting machine. Now I'm going to carefully remove the letters, including the middles of the A and the E's, and I'm going to keep those off to the side for now because I'm going to actually turn these into a 2-for-1 card, so I want to keep all the pieces. Now, I originally thought that putting this on a white card background would be a great idea, but unfortunately it ended up turning out to be too whitewashed. You couldn't see the sentiment at all. So I yanked that panel off and I grabbed a piece of cardstock and I dyed it pink using rose petal inks from Catherine Pooler. I didn't quite have such a baby pink color, so I thought this color would work really well. And I'm going to attach this now onto my card panel and lay my cover over top with the Easter. That way the Easter sentiment is now pink instead of white, and it doesn't really get lost on the background. Now, once I had that glued down, I went ahead and added the centers of the A's and the E's, and if you have trouble lining them up, you could always grab the letter you cut up and use that to line it all up, but I just did it kind of a bit freehand here. And here's a final look at that beautiful Easter card that I made with the fun, soft background that you can't even tell is washi tape. Now, as I said, I'm making a 2-for-1 card, so I thought I'd show another technique that I often forget, and that's DIY masked backgrounds. Now, when it comes to backgrounds, you can create anything by adding strips of washi tape on them and, making some nice white lines. You could do circles and rectangles and squares, whatever you like. So you can go ahead and grab yourself some washi tape or purple tape like I'm using here and mask off an area of cardstock. So I'm going to go from the top left corner to the bottom right corner this time, but I could have also added stripes, for example, with this. I could have added any sort of shape. I'm also going to double up on the purple tape just in case, because I know me, I'm quite clumsy and I'll probably get ink on the white areas. I'm going to go ahead and add my ink now to my background. I'm once again using that rose petals from Catherine Pooler, which is such a beautiful color. And I'm just going to color in my background with a blending tool. As I said, you can go ahead and do any endless possibilities here. You can go in with 2 different shades of pink. You can go in with a rainbow. It doesn't really matter. And you'll get this nice custom DIY background for your card. And that's really, really great for adding things like stripes to your card and all sorts of little patterns in geometric shapes. Now, my favorite part of the card is removing the purple tape or the washi tape carefully, and then you are revealed with this beautiful background here. Now, using those die cuts that I cut out during the previous technique, I've added Easter as well to the front of this card, giving me a nice 2-for-1 card here, and that was the end of that card. I attached both of these cards to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch white card bases, and you can see they look absolutely beautiful when they're all finished. Very spring and soft and pastel-y like colors. Today's question of the day is simple. What is the technique that you really enjoy doing, however sometimes you forget about it or it gets pushed off to the side? As you can see in this video, here are 5 of my favorites. And I also did this collaboration last year with my friend Ingrid. And her 5 and my 5 are on there as well. So at the end of the video, I'm going to be linking to the video from last year, and don't forget to check out Jenny's video as well, and you'll get in total 20 different techniques that are often forgot about that are really great. So for the next technique, it's called a NUVO drop background. Now I've done shapes with NUVO drops before, like flowers and balloons and butterflies and things like that. And I've used them as embellishments on cards, but I've never quite used them to fill up a lot of white space on a background. So I've created these stamp clusters here, and I stamped those out using my Misty. This is a layering stamp from Altenew, so it involves several layers. You stamp the cluster, and then you stamp each layer, and what it does is it fills in all the colors for you. So you don't have to go, or you can color it by hand. It's completely up to you if you don't like layering stamps. And I'm going to create a cluster on top of the card background. So my card background measures 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and I'm going to start sticking these onto my background using some 3D foam tape. I'm going to try and leave as little white space as possible in between. You could also leave more white space than I did and have more room for your NUVO drops. It's completely up to you. Now, 4 is definitely enough with this stamp set to stamp and cut out, and if you don't know my trick for layering stamps and creating 4 of them super quickly, I'll link to that tip in my hacks video up in the top corner and in the video description. So I'm also going to turn around my cardstock here, and I'm just going to trim the areas. And this is why I said 4 is actually more than enough, because you can use these trimmed off flower pieces to fill in any sort of small spaces around the edges. So that's another cool way of getting more out of your supplies. So as you can see, those trimmed off areas there, I can now use to fill in the spaces at the top of my card. So there's not really a lot of waste at the end of the day. Now comes the technique. I'm going to go ahead and add NUVO drops. Now before I do that, I like to kind of swatch them out and see if they fit with the ink colors that I'm using. And what this also allows me to do is get out any air bubbles that might be stuck in the nozzle. It'll prevent a lot of errors and, peaks and things like that when you're doing it. Another tip for using NUVO drops is to warm them up under your armpit, in your bra, whatever you want, sit on them, and it'll warm them up and prevent peaking. So those little peaks or little tips that you might get at the top, that'll make them nice and round. Now the key to making this look really great is to vary up the sizes of your NUVO drops. So make some small, some medium, some fairly large. And don't forget that it is recommended to leave the card flat and to dry for 48 hours. And the reason being for this is because although they will dry in about an hour, they are prone to shifting their shape within that time. So I noticed that if I put anything on top of them, within 24 hours, usually they'll end up quite flattening. Now the nice thing about this card is you have those stamps up on 3D foam tape, so it's actually protecting the NUVO drops in a lot of ways too, which is cool. All right, so now that I'm finished kind of filling in the background here with all sorts of NUVO drops, I've now created this cluster of stamps, but this cluster of drops as well that add interest. Another way to do this is just by adding clear NUVO drops or sequins or things like that to just fill up your background and add a little extra something to the card. To finish off this card, I just added a scripty hello die to the front here. The shadow is in white and the front of it is in the same red that I used to stamp some of those flowers, Rouge ink from Catherine Pooler. And that's the end of this card here, which is a very busy card, but I really like the way that it turned out. Now the next one is spotlight die cutting, and this might be my favorite card that I create in today's video. And probably the reason being is I generally like a lot of white space on my cards. So I'm using this beautiful layering stamp from Altenew and I'm stamping it out. Now the pattern that you want to create, you can use any sort of stamp or die or whatever you want to do this, and then affix it to your card. But I like to spend a little extra time. I like to do this with layering dies because I think it just looks really pretty when it's all said and done. I wanted to add some leaves to it, so I knew I needed to do some masking. So I stamped that first layer of that flower on a piece of Ink-a-Dink-a-Doo masking paper, and I just cut it out by hand. And so what I want to do is cut it right along the edge, and preferably no white space is showing on the edges of my flowers. That'll get you the best result. Then you can go ahead and adhere that masked image onto your sheet here over top of the flower, and you can go ahead and stamp your leaves. The reason why I have you so sped up here is because I want to focus more on the technique and not so much how I actually made the background. So this is just a really quick sort of intro to layering, stamping, and how I got that original image on there. Now you could do this, of course, with patterned paper as well and make the technique even easier. Okay, so now that that's all finished, I'm going to go ahead and line up the letters thank you. So to make this card, I was kind of cheating a little bit. I didn't have anything specific in mind for this card, like a sentiment or who it was for, and I wanted to create something where I didn't have to repeat any of the letters in the alphabet die, and thank you is perfect for that. Because if I had to use 2 A's or 2 O's, then it gets quite complex. So once I had all the letters laid out, I went ahead and grabbed a piece of purple tape and I picked all the letters up at the same time. If you have trouble lining them up, you can use your grid lines there on your cutting mat in order to do this. So I'm going to have thank and you as 2 separate pieces. So I've adhered both of these die cut sentiments here onto the front of my card, and I'm going to run it through my die cutting machine. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut little pieces of foam tape and adhere them to all of the letters here so they can stand up outside of the actual base there that I've created for them. And then I'm going to go ahead and put all of them inside the letters again. So now they're propped up using the foam tape instead of just glued right back into the slots that they were cut out of. It adds a little dimension, a little bit of a shadow behind them, and I think it looks really elegant when it's all said and done. So here's a look at that card here. I think it looks absolutely beautiful, and I think that this card is really, really elegant and pretty. Now to get into our last technique, I'm getting away from all the pinks that we've been using and all the florals, and I'm going right into a galaxy background. Now since this video is focusing on 5 techniques that I often forget about, I didn't want to just limit myself to that color palette. So I've now grabbed my Distress Oxide inks here. I have a yellow, pink, purple, green, blue, and black. And you can grab any types of inks for this. Dye inks, so you could use Altenew, Simon Says Stamp, or whatever inks that you have, and do this technique. But I like to use my Distress inks for ink blending, so I'm going to be doing that. I grabbed a piece of purple tape here to protect my fingers as I am doing this technique, and I'm going to start off by adding bits of color of each one of these colors, and I'm going to slowly start filling in the white space on my cardstock. Generally, I add color in 3s. It's appealing to the eye, and it just generally ensures that I have enough over the card. So starting off with the yellow, again, I've put in 3 little areas. No worries about it looking like a hot mess at first. That's how this technique always starts off. So I'm going to continue with the rest of the colors here, a little bit in fast motion so it goes quicker. And I'm going to add in the picked raspberry this time. The first color was mustard seed. Then I'm going in with some wilted violet and pine needles. You can see the white space slowly starting to fill up, and that's exactly what you want. By the time you get to the blue, you don't really want to have any white space left in the card panel. Now you might be sitting here thinking, how in God's name is this going to turn into a galaxy background? Well, just watch. It's going to be a lot of fun. So I'm going to grab some of my black soot Distress Oxide, and you want to make sure that the ink pad is not dry at all. You want to get a lot of ink on your sponge. Now you're going to grab that ink and you're going to just cover your entire background using black soot ink. Now you can go as heavy-handed or as little amount of ink as you like. It's really up to your preference. I prefer quite a bit of the black ink on here. I just think it looks more realistic and more like a night sky. It also covers up any sort of issues you've had where the blending maybe isn't so smooth. You're going to work your way in from the sides and then towards the middle, and it should get darker and darker, and then you can see it's starting to turn into that beautiful galaxy background that you want. Now you need to add your stars. You can use a variety of mediums for this. You can use, for example, a white pigment spray. I used a white marker, a paint marker. I put it down on my surface and I'm picking it up with my brush and just giving it a little bit of a flick.
You could also use any sort of acrylic paints, but I do recommend that you water them down at first, because if you don't, I'm going to show you what happens. So I'm going to purposely make this mistake on my card. You can see here that I have perfect stars at the moment. They are nice and round and great. But once I add paint and I don't water it down at all, what's going to end up happening is I'm going to get these sort of flicks of paint, and you don't want that. So just make sure it's watered down enough. Now, I originally put it on a card base to finish off the card, but I thought the background was a little too dark for my liking. I don't particularly like super dark cards, so I went ahead and just added some purple tape and this Hugs popper die, or topper die rather, and ran that through my die cutting machine. And now I can use both panels for a 2-for-1 card as well when I'm all done. I'm just going to adhere in white this Hugs die, which is also a part of the Hugs topper die, and that is going to be just adhered onto a regular card base when it's done. So here's a look at that technique. So I hope you enjoyed all 5 of these techniques today. They were a lot of really fun to create.
Thank you so much everyone for watching today's video. If you're interested in checking out Jenny's video on her 5 techniques, don't forget to check the link in the video description below. I also have a link for the video collaboration I did last year with Ingrid, and that shows off our 10 forgotten techniques as well. Bye for now.